Hello everyone. Today in this video, um, the title of the video is, what is the best blue-red version, blue-red control or combo control version in modern. It's maybe obviously a bit of a clickbait title. I wanted to make a video about, the differences, and the strengths and the weaknesses of each version. Because it is something that kind of, and also like go through like why the different versions. Just here, Blue Moon Thing in the Eyes, Red Breed, Kiki-Jiki, why they usually look the way they look, what kind of reasons drive the meta deck building process, So what are the driving forces behind the card choices, and what are the strengths and the weaknesses of each version, and maybe obviously, for which metagames you should consider each version, and just in general go over these kind of fundamental ideas, fundamental takeaways, like when it comes to I guess when it comes to what is the goal of each version. The goal, obviously the goal is to win, but how do you go about it? A bit more precisely, it's gonna be nothing super amazing or deep or complex. It's just something kind of basic and fundamental ideas I've thought to myself that I feel like it might be useful to put into this kind of condensed video, and it might be of use to some people, especially those who are new to maybe blue-red in modern, especially now that, of course, Modern Horizons 2 is coming very soon, as I am recording this video. Counterspell reprint or introduction to modern is something that I think is kind of making people maybe it's making a lot of people are maybe interested in blue-red and in other control decks because of the counterspell addition to modern format. So maybe this kind of video is most useful for those who are new to blue-red and modern, or blue-red in modern, I don't know. Anyway, the script. Yes. I guess that's the introduction. We can just go right into, just have a look at the different versions. You can't really see from this view here, everything is very small. But, well, we have in the top left just hard control, Blue Moon style with a white splash. And on the top right we have the Thing in the Eyes build, something that I played a bit in the past, or I guess a lot in the past. And bottom left, Further Reach, which has gotten really popular as of late. And then Kiki-Jiki build on the bottom right, that I played a lot in the fall of 2020. Of course, the thing here is right now, I didn't really bother with any other version of Blue Moon except for the Thing in the Eyes builds. But now, due to metagame changes and stuff, I've come around to try all the different versions, and I feel like I can articulate ideas about them. I can have ideas and thoughts about them, opinions even about them, and I built different versions, for each style of blue-red. I guess I built different deck lists for each version. So I guess we just jump right into well, I guess the fundamental idea here is something that we touch upon on each time we check out the deck list here is like basically like what your win con is and how you plan to win the game kind of dictates what you can ignore, what kind of threats from the opponent's side you get to ignore. Basically, we have more reactive builds here that are just like trying to control the game and win slowly with scraps and leftovers. And then we have the more proactive versions that just have more cards basically just dedicated to winning the game. And you don't have to answer everything. All the threats, you don't have to control the opponent necessarily if you can just get the combination you want to win the game. And like I said, again, each version of these decks, you can obviously mix and match. You can do all kinds of experiments, but typically there are natural builds. There are reasons why the decks look the way they are. Major difference between, I guess, the more hard control versions and the combo versions is, I think, typically and naturally you want to have a fetch mana base in hard control and Thing the Ice, and you want to have a fetchless mana base in the combo versions. The combo versions benefit more from knowing your scries, what you put onto the bottom of the deck. Especially, of course, do it to be, just to do it trying to find maybe the combo. There's more fluctuation between the values of the cards. Extra, your second or your third receiver Exarch is very poor. You want to bottom it, and you want the card to stay in the bottom. You don't want to shuffle it back in your library. This, of course, nothing too groundbreaking. And also, yeah, so you get the scry value. Also, because with the combo versions, Valakut Awakening is a card that really just gains value. Again, for the same reason. When there are cards that you really benefit from drawing into, and you just you wanna dig for it. Valakut Awakening is obviously a lot better. So instead of just trying to maybe fix purely flooding versus screwing kind of scenario, you also get more situations where you just you get to dig for a really powerful card. And as you cast Awakenings and as you never shuffle your deck, basically you reach spots in the game where you are approaching 100%, and you will reach 100% in the likelihood that you will find the card you're looking for, because obviously as you keep casting Awakenings and putting cards on the bottom of your library, and you keep doing this same process, eventually you will draw to be cards that you want to draw. Whereas if you cast Awakening, put 10 cards on the bottom of the deck, or something, maybe a bit less, and you shuffle your deck, and you do it again. You again bottom 10, and you draw 10, or draw 11. Yeah, you didn't find the card you wanted, and then you can, maybe you then shuffle again, maybe you're forced to shuffle, and you again cast Awakening. You are still not drastically, each Valakut Awakening still you are not deterministically going to draw into the card that you're looking for, whereas with a fetchless mana base, you will 100% draw the card you are looking for. Well, that is nothing to. I am really hoping I'm not insulting anyone's intelligence here, but I just figured, I'm just gonna go through the basics here. Hopefully it's not too overbearing. But I understand if this is too obvious for many of you. And then also, again, so, with the hard control versions, you don't really have that kind of, you don't have the win buttons that you can draw into. And also, because you are leaning more into hard control, Blood Moon gains value, as in, because you are looking to answer more things, like you are looking to, you are forced to control the game more, you are forced to answer basically all kinds of threats from the opponent's side, and you are forced to fight in card advantage wars. You get more value out of Blood Moon, like, you get to shut off, like, these creature lands and, these Canopy Land variations. All these, like, it does matter. Again, you are fighting in the card advantage axis very strongly. So Blood Moon is just a really relevant card for you here, and again, that kind of makes it so that you typically always just want to be on the Blood Moon plan if you are playing a more hard control style. So this is just like basically the natural, kind of way of building these decks, I feel like. Obviously, you can play Blood Moon and fetch a mana base, especially in Brutal Breach. But, depending on the meta, if Blood Moon is really good in the meta game, then, you can just go ahead and play Blood Moon in Brutal Breach, and maybe even Kiki-Jiki. But, this is just like something natural. For Kiki-Jiki, it is a bit harder to support Blood Moon, because Alchemist's Charm is such a strong card for every blue-red version. Because it's like basically, it is very good when you want to control the game, but it's also very good when you just want to proactively, draw into your combinations and just pressure the opponent. So like trying to cast Kiki-Jikis and Alchemist's Charms, it means you really do need to utilize your Cascade bluffs. So you are really like stretching your mana base thin if you are trying to like, cast Charm, cast Kiki-Jiki, and also have Blood Moon in the deck. Things become a bit messy, but you can do it if you really want to. Well, that covers that, I think. Of course, also, I forgot to mention, if you are playing a fetchless mana base, you get the advantage of, well, your madcap experiments become better. Because obviously, as you have Platinum Empyrean in play, that means you cannot crack your fetch lands. But when you have fetch lands, you don't run into that problem. You can just all of your lands, none of your lands get turned off by Platinum Empyrean. That is good. And also, because naturally fetch mana bases want to play Awakenings and fetch mana bases don't, because you want to really just basically have as many basic islands as possible to make sure you can cast your triple Lumina spells. While the Blood Moon is out consistently, you can't really dedicate slots to like lands that aren't dual lands or basic islands. Like it becomes difficult. Like it's really, you want basically everything to tap for blue, but you also want to have basic islands. So it becomes difficult to justify Valakut Awakenings. Yes, Valakut Awakenings also makes this package better, because you get to easily bottom these Empyreans you naturally draw into, which are weak cards, on their own. And also, of course, this also means your madcap experiments, are less likely to be dead as you draw into them. If you like happen to like cast madcap, maybe you happen to have an Empyrean in your hand in the opener or something like that, or you draw into it early, and then you cast one experiment, and you put the second Empyrean into play, and now any remaining madcap experiments you draw into are dead. So, with the Balagot Awakening, you get to bottom these the Empyreans you naturally draw into, and you get the idea. And also with a fetchless mana base, you get to play Boil if you want to. Basically, you can build fetchless mana base that uses a lot of islands, and it is useful to do this against Blood Moon for the most part. This kind of deck list with even if you have no fetch lands, just having 7 islands with the Balagot Awakenings, you are actually pretty good against Blood Moon. Like, you don't die to it very easily. This kind of deck list, which is like supporting Boil, has to play less islands. I think 3 islands is a good number. You want to have 3, I think, so that you have actual outs to Blood Moon, and also that you can fetch lands against like Path to Excise and whatnot. Anyway, this kind of version gets to play Boil. But there are obviously trade-offs to everything. Like, Boil is very good against island heavy decks, but it is also... And also against Triad decks. Most Triad decks, Boil is good against. But you don't always like have that kind of metagame where Boil is good, so you have to like, consider the pros and cons, obviously. But I think that's like the general differences. We can just go into now, just look at each deck list, each version of the archetype in more detail, and just like, I guess, go over the pros and cons, and maybe like when, maybe, in what kind of metagames you maybe want to play this version and that version. So I'm just gonna go to the hard control version first. It is a very classic idea, Lord control with Blood Moons. This version has the white splash, which is very recent but also very natural, I think. This list is by BN Blunt. Originally, I think it was... oh man, I think it was actually Maktobayash who tried a white splash first, and then it was quickly adopted by other people in the modern streaming community. Yenrek, I think, played with this. Harry MTG played with this kind of list. So what is the upside? Well, here in this hard control version, we have the least slots dedicated to threats. Which means we have the greatest amount and variety of reactive spells. We have more answers and more varied answers to everything. Actually, we are more likely to have like good interaction early and fast. That's very natural, right? Also, we get to blank opponents' removal spells. So, like, Snapcaster Mage hardly counts as a target for removal spells. And besides them, we don't offer any easy targets for opponents who play Fatal Push or Path to Exile or whatnot. So basically, we are already in many matchups we are up in cards, and we play Chase the Mind Sculptor and Ral basically as the hard win cons. You can win with Snapcaster Mage and Bolt Beats, but against some decks it's not very reliable. Yeah. Naturally, this build... I guess we should address the white splash first. No, Blood Moon first. Okay. So again, we are a slow deck. We want to be able to answer the value and the threats the opponent's lands generates. And again, this deck is more like more interested than other versions in having like maybe kind of game 1 hedge against certain decks. Kind of being pre-ported. Blood Moon, is very good against some big mana decks. Can be good against well, there are many decks typically Chant, the Shadow variants especially, can be weak to Blood Moon. And obviously with Chase Mind Sculpture, we have this card selection power. So we get to shuffle away these dead cards if we want to. Now, what is the downside basically of just going full control and not having many slots for threats? Well, obviously we are slow, and the game goes long. We need to have inevitability basically. We have to be able to control and answer basically every threat opponent produces. For this kind of version, like 1/1 elemental token is maybe the biggest hurdle. Like just like random sticky leftover threats that come, classic examples, I guess, in current modern metagame is basically maybe like Seasoned Pyromancer generates tokens, goes wide, and comes back from graveyard and makes 1/1s. And we have ways to deal with tokens, but you have to work for it. Like in theory, just a 1/1 could hit you 20 turns in a row, and this version could tie to it. You have to be able to like control the opponent. Basically, that's what control does and wants to do. And basically, you need to have the inevitability. So, I guess another good example is something like Dredge with Bloodcast. Again, even if you can kill Bloodcast a couple times, maybe you slow the opponent down, the Dredge player with the recurring threats will have the inevitability, because their threats will keep coming back, and you just like basically the Dredge player has the inevitability here. You can't control the Bloodcast really unless you get a really good, maybe like you can try to out-tempo the Bloodcasts and amalgams with Placewalkers, just sticking up and tapping down the opponent's threats with Cryptic Command. But again, that's basically aggroing the opponent, and it is difficult. Again, the issue comes from that you don't have the inevitability while you are basically trying to naturally go into a long game and win the long game. Another example can be something like Tron. You can outgrind Tron, and you can slam Blood Moon against Tron, and get a huge tempo advantage like that. Basically that's what Blood Moon is. Basically, it is just like it slows the opponent down a lot, and that means that your chases and your rals and your Snapcast mages are faster clocks. You basically turn into the aggro deck after you have the Blood Moon. You are the proactive player at that point. But against Tron, if you don't have Blood Moon, basically the opponent usually has the inevitability with Yulamog. Yulamog sacrificing Sanctum of whatever Ugin, getting another Ulamog. The uncounterable cast trigger is a very, I guess, typical threat for this kind of control deck. Again, you can't really control it. You lose the inevitability. That is the downside. And again, it's for this kind of deck, it is hard to switch gears. Like, you are really just kind of going to the long game, and you need to have like, for these kind of varying threats, you need to have the right answers. You need to be able to have the necessary specific answers to each kind of, sticky, annoying threats that the opponent might play. And so, for this reason, I think the Void Splash is very natural. Because we are a slow deck, against red decks like Burn and Proves, we are going to have the issue that, even if we control the opponent, the reach the opponent has poses a problem that, it might be difficult to contain and defend yourself from, the instant speed burn spells if you go to a low life total. It can be hard to control that. And because we are so slow, it's not easy to, switch gears and just turn on the aggression. You can do it with snappy beats, But especially against, the progress decks with Lava Dart, that can be really difficult. Like, you are going to win very slowly usually. And again, for these reasons, Void Splash makes a lot of sense. You get the timely reinforcements. You get the life gain, which is really, really relevant, for the, just, to have a chance. And survive the long game against, these red decks. Also, you get tokens, you get to go wide yourself. This is why also why Anger of the Gods and Explosives are really necessary. Like, really necessary for this kind of deck. Because, like, again, like I said, you kind of have to answer everything. You have to answer all the 1/1s. The random 1/1 tokens, elemental tokens that the opponent produces. You need to be able to deal with those. So these are really like natural costs to have here in this kind of deck list. And that's the game plan, I guess. That's why these decks kind of look like they look the way they look. I guess it's just like a solid deck. Once we take into consideration these things, yeah, this kind of deck list looks well rounded to me. To be fair and honest, I haven't played with this version very recently. Yeah. I guess that's all I can say. Like, you can tune your Blue Moon hard control list to beat many things. The issue, of course, is like when the metagame is very open and wide, different kind of, and the decks demand different kind of answers. Your sideboard starts get, stretched thin, and it can be hard to maintain positive win rates against the whole meta. But yeah, I mean, you can be very creative with the deck list. It's basically just all answers. You can do kind of whatever you want. I think this kind of version is pretty good in Fatal Push meta. Again, you are very good against Fatal Push. You don't really provide any targets for Fatal Push, and maybe in just generally in narrow metas, you can have very tuned sideboards. That's where this kind of deck shines, I think. Yeah. I guess maybe the biggest issue for this kind of version is when the opponent doesn't care about counter spells. But this is true for most Blue versions, but something like E-Tron, obviously, with Cavernous Souls and threats that don't die Lightning Bolt, you are in especially bad situation, because now that your main ways of interaction are kind of shut off, then you really don't have a plan B. Like, the plan B is really like medium. You just are hoping to slam a Planeswalker and hope that's good enough. So the plan B for this deck is kind of weak. Basically, you need to have your interactive spells to line up. Otherwise, you can be in trouble. Next. My old love, Thing the Ice, Blue Moon. This is an old list with Mystic Sanctuary. It is banned, but you just play more whatever lands. It doesn't matter. This is basically how the deck would look like anyway in the current meta for me. So it's pretty close to the hard control version. The difference is we have introduced a proactive element into the deck in Thing the Ice, which means we get to ignore more things. Thing the Ice, it gives us a faster clock against decks like Burn and such, so there's less need for life gain. We get to ignore tokens more easily. So against something like Blue-Red Storm, for example, a hard control list really has to respect empty warrants. So you definitely want to pack multiple sweepers. For example, with Thing the Ice, you are less pressured to have sweepers, because there's a good chance that you just have been able to slam a Thing the Ice early. Or in some percentage of the games, you have Thing the Ice, and just blocking a couple of times and flipping Thing in the Eyes is enough to beat empty overruns. So again, you get to kind of ignore that kind of elements dimension of the game plan. Also, you can kind of bounce back. You can, I guess, get back into the game against something like Amulet Titan. You can beat big result threats. It is a big tempo swing, provided, of course, Thing in the Eyes has to always survive. That is the caveat. Caveat, but caveat is the correct pronunciation, I think. Yeah, again, it is just again, proactive elements to the deck. This is why, we don't have White Splash, because obviously, again, there's less need for life gain, and tokens obviously play poorly with Thing in the Eyes. We don't want to really, combine Thing in the Eyes with, what is the card again? Oh. Timely Reinforcements, yeah. Otherwise, it's quite similar. Like, again, the weakness of I guess I was still again, yeah. So good against big Thing in the Eyes, good against big mana. You get value from bouncing your own Snapcast mages. You get to like keep the interaction going, and you can close the game out faster. Also, very good against Stretch. Really, kind of the perfect threat against Stretch, especially. You get to block. You get to empty the board, and you just have this 7/8 beater, takes a couple, maybe 3 hits, and they die. Plays very well with cryptic commands, so you can actually like turn your cryptic commands into these proactive threats, I guess, like proactive element. Kind of a new mode to the card in this version. Now, the downside of Thing in the Eyes is it dies to Doomblade. So you are turning on all the fatal pushes from the opponent's deck in a very big way. And that's the downside. You are just like in a worse spot against the fatal push decks than if you were playing a hard control version. That's kind of really... that sums up a lot, I think. Also, Skyclave Apparition is a new issue for Thing in the Eyes. Like, Skyclave Apparition is another card that is quite uniquely... it's good against Thing in the Eyes. And if not for Thing in the Eyes, it would be quite poor against blue-red control. But Thing in the Eyes is kind of a perfect target for Skyclave Apparition. You are really turning that card on in a big way against white decks. And also, kind of metagame development over the years of Provost becoming more popular than Burn is bad for Thing in the Eyes. Provost decks can more cleanly answer Thing in the Eyes without losing card advantage, or maybe even tempo, especially with Soulscar Mage. So that is again something that has made Thing in the Eyes less good. But yeah, still the basic idea of when Thing in the Eyes is good, when it is bad, has stayed the same. It has stayed the same. Now, one big thing or important thing about Thing in the Eyes is because it is bad in some matchups and good in others, but mainly because it is bad in some matchups, you need to be able to, and you are able to board it out. So basically, your sideboard plans very clearly, like you have a plan of boarding Thing in the Eyes out in these and these and these matchups, and you bring something else, and that obviously like also dictates how you build your sideboard. Otherwise, again, it is not a big dip. You are playing only 3. I think 3 is a good number for Thing in the Eyes. You are only playing 3 threats, additional threats compared to like hard control. Not a huge deal. Of course, what it does do is, Thing in the Eyes makes you wanna play more, or it improves your instants and sorceries. It kinda, you know, makes you build your deck in a specific way for that reason, which does have some, you know, repercussions. You know, you mainly wanna play Visions, and Visions is like, it does improve consistency in some ways, and it's especially good when you wanna draw into your sideboard cards, but then also Visions is kinda bad because it makes you spend mana on an effect that doesn't impact the board or trade with the opponent. And in a smaller way, well, it makes you worse against Eidolon, for example, and it makes you worse off against Shadows of the Void. These things matter a bit, or somewhat. But yeah, kind of close to just basic straight control, but, you know, very, very like, you know, it is not the same deck though, it is different deck, and again, you know, you put things in the ice, you put a proactive element into your deck, and you get to ignore some things, some threats that the opponents might play, but you also introduce a weakness into your own deck. Then we just move on to the combo variations through the breach. Where do we start? Again, this deck is obviously just trying to play through the breach and put Emrakul in the board and swing. It's a very simple strategy. This is a list by S-Man 2.0. I think this is distinctly his version of, or their version of the deck. You know, and they had a good results in a couple back-to-back weekends, I think. Maybe in Super and Modern Challenge and whatnot. And I think that deck list, even though it's not what I would have played then or would play now personally, I think it's a very clean, very like fundamental, natural list. A very natural build for Through the Breach. It's basically, how do we put it? Again, we have 4 Emrakul for the Breach. We are kind of maxed out on just trying to find the... And also for Relic of the Awakening. We are maxed out on trying to find the combo and getting to play Through the Breach, you know, on turn 5. This deck is really primed to take advantage of Relic of the Awakening. Because, again, these combo pieces don't really do anything on their own. Unlike even in Kiki-Jiki, where the combo pieces do something with the rest of the deck. Emrakul basically is just stone cold blank, you know, on its own without Through the Breach, and vice versa. Relic of the Awakening is really good in this deck. And, you know, the spell suit here, very like natural. We have 4 Remand, 4 Augmented Charm. You know, we are really just, you know, we wanna max on the, you know, card draw effects. There's less variety in interaction, but we do have, you know, the heavy hitters between the sideboard and main deck. We have main deck explosives here, which are quite flexible answers. And Flame Slash is the cost again, just like, and Dispute, you know, efficient cards that are really good. When they are good, they are really good. The upside of this deck, this version, is super immune to removal spells. Like, they even like lightning bolt effects and whatnot don't do anything. Like, you can shrug off, you know, Lavaras and Rift Boss, whatever. Doesn't matter what they have for the most part. There are some caveats again here, like Kaya's Guile is a good answer to Emrakul, and yada yada. There are always exceptions, but for the most part, again, super immune to removal spells. You are really turning off opponent's interaction, opponent's removal spells with this list. So when Ferapush and lightning bolts are popular. This version gains a lot of percentage points. This version also has really strong inevitability. When you put Emrakul into your deck, you have this strong threat that just like can win the game fast, but also it means you just can't, basically you cannot die of decking out. And eventually, even if opponent is like maybe just answering what you're doing and keeping you in check, once you hit 15 land drop, you can just play Emrakul, take an extra turn, and after that point, like what does the opponent do? Like eventually we'll just start chaining Emrakuls, taking extra turns, and like you can't really contain that. Unless if opponent can't kill you, you have the inevitability 100% of the time. And this is a big reason why this deck trended, because this Emrakul through the breach version has crushing inevitability against Green Heliod and Infinite Life. Like you just don't care one bit about Infinite Life. It doesn't matter. You can just play Emrakul or put it into play through the breach and shuffle your library or graveyard back into your library, and eventually the Heliod player will deck out, so you just win. They can't do anything about it. The downside is it has unique weakness to whiteness. And also, well, I guess like maybe I should mention counter spells first. Like when Stubborn Denial is popular, this version is abysmal. Any kind of pressure combined with counter spells, or like these spell PS effects, Stubborn Denial effects. These cheap counters that counter non-creature spells are really good against this version, because you are either leaning heavily on Through the Breach, or your counter spells, or Magic Experiment. And yeah, those just run into spell PS and Stubborn Denial very hard. Also, there's no kind of counterplay against Force Negation for this deck. And so if those kind of cards are popular, then this deck becomes less appealing. You just kind of lose to those cards. Basically, that's kind of sums it up. And also, again, like I said a second ago, unique weakness to whiteness. If opponent, gets on the board fast and just goes wide with tokens, you are in trouble. You can put Emrakul into play on turn 5 and it might not matter at all. Opponent, if they are, again, fast out of the gate, they can put you down to low life total. And even after you hit them with Emrakul and they sacrifice 6 permanents, they can still easily have enough, threats on the board to just finish you off. I guess, yeah. Hammer Time is maybe the best example of this kind of deck. That just like, it goes really far, really fast. It doesn't need a lot of mana, and like, that is one unique bad matchup for this deck. Then also Dredge. Dredge is abysmal matchup for this deck without strong sideboard options. The Dredge deck, they gain life from creeping chills. So even if you connect with an Emrakul, you will not finish them off in one hit. They can rebuild from 0 lands, just putting, dredging on the draw step, returning the recursive threats into play and just going again. Hitting them with Emrakul doesn't kill them. And the worst part is, of course, the Narcomoebas. Narcomoebas are just excellent blockers against Emrakul. It's really tough to just like in bolt the Narcomoebas, and also like have bolts to put the opponent to 15 or lower, and just you gotta dodge the creeping chills and and not die yourself. So it's tough. So if Dredge is at all popular, you really just need like Anger the Gods and Relics in this deck, in that matchup. Those are maybe the biggest examples of like this weakness to whiteness. There are other decks for sure, but I think those two really just like are the best examples. In this deck, you can play again Plan Bs, you can play Planeswalkers, but for the most part, like the strength of this deck is that you don't provide targets for the opponent's removal spells, and yeah, that is a big thing for you. I think that sums it up. Yeah, very well-rounded version. This version has like uniquely good matchups against something like Obosh Red, for example, and which can be difficult for other Pro-Red versions. This deck can shrug off like the all the kind of grindiness that the burn spells provide to Obosh Red. Again, because you are just immune to removal spells, basically. It's yeah, that's it. So again, we put this package into the deck. We put this proactive combo into the deck, and we get to ignore even more things. This deck, it is a bit lopsided. Like in some matchups, you can basically ignore almost everything. You can let opponent do everything. You just don't care. You don't have to control them at all, because once you do the Breach Emrakul, you just win. Though then there are some matchups, like mentioned, where you struggle to control and your combo doesn't really win the game at all. So there's a bit like, an asterisk there, but again, you get to ignore more things. Your interaction suit is thinner, actually. Then the last version of Blue-Red is the Kiki-Jiki version. And here, this is like maybe I guess naturally the last version to choose or pick as the last version, because the combo of Kiki-Jiki and Exarch means you get to ignore absolutely everything, like and that is the biggest upside of having this combination in the deck. You can fall behind on the board. Doesn't matter how much, you can be in the worst spots imaginable, but if you just manage to put these cards into play, you just win. It just doesn't matter, you just don't care. Like opponent can have 6 Wormcoil engines in play. Any other Pro version would just lose, basically. But if you have Exarch and Kiki in play, you just win. That is the strength of this version. And unlike in the Through the Breach example, your combo pieces do something on their own. They provide you value, even when the other part of the combo isn't drawn. So again, basically piece everything except for a few exceptions. You have some unique weaknesses against, well, not so relevantly anymore, but in the past, kind of relevant. You are poor against Ad Nauseam and these like Angel's Grace effects. You are reliant on the combat step. You lose to... Oh, you don't win against Arbiak Champion. You have to deal with Arbiak Champion, which, depending, again, very meta dependent. Does it matter? Does it not? Depends on the meta. Another upside is this combo is obviously creature based, so you can shrug off Force of Negation. So if Sorcery Speed plays backed up by Force of Negation are big in the meta, then this version has a unique advantage in that kind of meta. And then the Snapcaster Mage Kiki-Jiki combination. This is a strong value engine in the matchups, like against something like Green White Heliod, which has tough time answering a 5-drop. Can also be good against like many fatal push decks. Again, Kiki-Jiki doesn't die to fatal push. So, you know, there can be some matchups where that is actually relevant. Kiki-Jiki is surprisingly tough. You know, has tough skin against fatal push. Of course, the big downside, the big weakness of this version is your combo is very suspect against spot removal spells. Especially burn. Something like Oboshred is super good against Kiki-Jiki. So if a deck like Oboshred is popular in the meta, you just need to have a way to deal with that. In general, you need to have a plan B with this deck. You have to have a plan for when opponent can kind of naturally and easily just say go and pass turn with just mana open for removal spells. And there are different ways to do this. You can play Ral. Here I have a Teferi, 5-mana Teferi. He's kind of a white one, but again, the important thing here is, you know, you need to have a way to deal with the kind of opponent who just has spot removal open. Of course, you can just play control game. You can just like play Remands and Charms and Cryptic Commands and win like that. You know, this version can play pretty good control game. But still, again, that is something to keep in mind. Kraken Drake is also kind of a plan B. Doesn't die to Lightning Bolt, and it plays well with Kiki-Jiki. So a natural card you have in the deck. I think it's a mainstay, basically. Very kind of unique to this Kiki-Jiki version. Also shares the upside of being a creature. So, you know, you can't force negation this, you can't stubborn denial this, or any of this, you can't spell PS these. So in this way, basically, kind of, in this regard, Kiki-Jiki and Real Breach are the polar opposites. They have the opposite weaknesses, basically. This version, Kiki-Jiki is very weak to burn spells and spot removal spells in general, but strong against non-creature counter spells. And the opposite is true of Real Breach. Now, on top of like getting to ignore basically everything the opponent does with the combo, you also have a natural strength against these go wide strats and X1s in particular. You know, Exarch really shines against something like Thalia and, you know, the classic 1/1 elemental token. You also, again, and I would say you definitely would do want to play with the Kraken Drake in the deck. So basically you are playing more of a board with creatures, you have more blockers naturally. And relevantly, of course, for toughness blockers. So, you know, you can shrug off these kind of small creatures that would otherwise be annoying to something like hard control. So yeah, there's less need for board wipes. Again, this version is naturally strong against Stretch. The combo beats Stretch. We can, you know, just block a lot of Stretch threats with these cards, and yeah. That's kind of the idea. I think this version is very fun. I have to give bonus points for that. Kiki-Jiki is really a fun card. And Kraken Drake, I think Kraken Drake is uniquely strong against something like these, I guess, like Death Shadow decks and such. Decks that often go to low life total and can easily fight against Remands and Mono Leagues. Sometimes just like slamming Drakes is really good against these decks, especially against Grixis Death Shadow that relies on stubborn denial against control decks. So Kraken Drake really just like kinda is a perfect like plan B, you know, against that kind of annoying thing. stuff. Yeah, I think that kind of covers it. So basically, again, I just want to say, come back to this idea of like just like, you know, getting to ignore things. Like that's kind of what it means to have more proactive threats and elements in your deck. You know, what do you get to ignore? You know, can you ignore 1/1 token or not? This version, you really can't. And these versions, you know, they kind of can. I think from these interactions, or like these, I don't know, you kind of got the idea, I would imagine, of like the strength and the weakness of each version. And it's definitely just like, depends on the meta. Especially if you are an FNM player, you know, you wanna just like hit your local game store. These versions have really like unique, drastically different like matchup portfolios. Like, and if you can choose between what to build or what to choose between these decks, you know, you should choose wisely, I guess is my point here. And just some version here, maybe you are playing with the breach and you start losing. Doesn't mean you are bad or that blue-red is bad. It can just mean that the metagame shifted and it's time to adopt something different. I think the popularity of like force negation and maybe lava dart and barrel push, these are really big driving forces behind, you know, what you should choose as your blue red kind of win con and core. Yeah, I guess that's it. Clickbait title. I don't think there's any best version. Different versions have, you know, their time in the sunlight, and it's all about just like, you know, you want to read the metagame, you know, and be ahead of the curve and just adapt fast. You know, with the deck that you play and also with the sideboard, that's how you get the percentage points. You know, there's never gonna be a version of Blue Red that's just gonna be like tier 0, gonna stay, you know, at the top of the metagame and be consistently good. You always gotta be just adapting to the metagame. Metagame changes, and yeah, you gotta respect that. I think that's it. I have certainly missed something here in this video. If you have any questions, remarks, ideas, just, you know, let me know in the comment section and I will try to answer. Yeah, I hope this was a long video. Maybe I hope it was at least in parts interesting to some. Yeah, just, you know, try to choose wisely. That's it. And yeah, have a good one. I'll see you next time.